This is Campus Takeover, brought to you by Trib Preps. Each week we'll visit the campus of one of Friday night's marquee matchups. We'll break down key storylines and talk with players and coaches from both teams. And afterward, we'll pick the winners of the biggest games. Hit it! We're here at Bingham High School, the home of the two-time defending Class 5A champions, the Bingham Miners. The Miners are preparing to play Bishop Gorman in the nation's marquee game of the week. The top-rated Gales are coming from Nevada, while the Bingham Miners check in at number 7. This week we will interview John Lamborn and several of the Bingham players and get perspective from Dusty Lister of Xfinity Sports Report, who covers the Gales. We will choose the winners of the 7 marquee games at the end of the segment as always, but first let's review what happened last week with our Stars of the Week. Deal us a pair of 3. Each week we will discuss the 3 best notable performances and 3 surprise teams that caught our eye from last week. Provo's Vilami Angi completed 18 of 20 passes for 249 yards and 5 touchdowns in a victory against Payson. Pineview's Lance Manriguez hauled in 6 receptions for 125 yards and 1 touchdown in a win against Uinta. The Panthers are 2-0 on the young season. Dixie's Trey Miller rambled for 208 yards and 1 touchdown on 17 carries in a win against Mojave, Arizona. The Flyers will play Alta on their home turf on Friday night. Kearns reached the 2-0 mark for the first time since 2008 with its win against Granger. The Cougars haven't started 3-0 in 22 years. They can accomplish that feat with a win against Cottonwood on Friday night. Lone Peak improved to 2-0 with a dominating 35-14 win against Timpview. The Knights broke Timpview's 27-game winning streak on their home turf and look to be the real deal this season. Maple Mountain survived against Corner Canyon with a valiant effort by Jaron Hall, who completed a pass with 8 seconds remaining to push the Eagles to 2-0. They've won 2 very close games in the season and are now ranked in the Tribune's power ranking as number 5 team in the Class 4A. We are here with Bingham head coach John Lamborn as his Miners prepare to take on Bishop Gorman from Nevada in arguably the best game in all of the nation this week. The number 1 ranked Bishop Gorman Gales from Nevada and the 7th ranked Bingham Miners. What do you think this game is doing for the publicity, not only for your own school and your own program, but also for the state of Utah high school football?
I think it's awesome for Utah football. We've kind of been off the radar for a number of years and then just gradually built ourselves into a little bit more national promise with not just us, but a lot of guys that have gone out, or a lot of schools that have gone out and played other schools from out of state. So I think it's a good thing. Of course, we have to play well, or it could be a bad thing.
You did play well last year, lost in overtime 23-20. Can we expect kind of the same trickery on 4th down? You went for it 4 times. Can we expect those kind of that aggressive style from you guys this time around?
You know, without divulging any plans, which there really isn't anything specific, is we're prepared for just about anything we feel like we need to do as the game unfolds. But, yeah, we're not holding anything back. If it's needed, we'll do it.
Coach, last year you had the chance, really should have beaten Bishop Gorman in overtime. You hold them to a field goal, and you have Nico Fertitta forces the fumble, and then last year against Booker T, you had the lead, defense on the field, obviously where you wanted to be. Does this change your perspective of what you're trying to accomplish with your team with these national games and a chance to really just continue to perpetuate this program to be a national program and not only a state prominent program?
Yeah, we put ourselves in a position to win twice and came out empty-handed on that. We've been emphasizing the overtime thing all the off season and throughout camp and so forth, because our intentions are to go out and win the football game, and then let all the other things that come with that come, which will be exciting and great. But for us, it's that 48 minutes on the field that we need to take care of.
One of the questions is offensively, 6 points against Harriman last week.
Yeah.
What was the issue against the Mustangs, do you think?
How about the Mustangs? Pretty good team there. Dustin Pierce doing a good job out there with the rest of his staff. Pretty talented football team. I don't think that we played at our best, but you got to give them some credit, and they did some things. But we look forward to improving throughout the year, and of course we'll have to improve rapidly for this week. But we look forward to improving throughout the year, and maybe they will too, and we'll have a chance for a rematch. We'll see what happens then.
Obviously, this game is getting a ton of attention.
Yeah.
How do you keep your kids from getting too high emotionally headed into this game?
I think the fact that we played both those games last year, the Booker T game as a bowl game and the Bishop Gorman game, has already provided some perspective. It's ultimately another high school football game. It has a lot of hype built up with it. For us, it's it's a tremendous opportunity, but at the same time, it is just another football game. It happens to be at our place, so I think that helps us stay within ourselves. So I think we're okay that way.
This Bishop Gorman team looks a little more explosive than the team a year ago, with the speed of Biagio Walsh, the running back, and then also Tyjon Lindsey, very, very quick, the number 25, the wide receiver. Do you feel that same way? They look a little bit more explosive this year as compared to last year, where Tate Martell was his first start against Bingham last year as a sophomore.
Tate was pretty explosive against us, and we had to try to contain him. He got loose a few times last year. Obviously, he's a little bit more seasoned and a little bit more experienced. I think that obviously he's legit, and I believe he just signed with Texas A&M. I believe it was,
yes,
or just committed. It's not signed, but committed to it. The other guys, they were on the field last year in some capacity. Maybe not so much the Baggio guy, but the other one. And then they had the big tight end who was very explosive.
Yeah, Alize Jones.
It's hard to say where they're at relative to where they were last year, but given their history, you know that they're going to reload like they have for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure they're going to be very explosive.
And then on the defensive side for them, I mean, they're big. It's kind of almost like watching a junior college team where they bring these kids in and they're all pretty prominent. How do you think your front's going to do? We mentioned last week against Harriman, they're very, very physical, but so is Gorman. And how do you think that matches up for you with the run game?
Yeah, a little bit different style of defense between the two, but I actually think that Harriman probably matches up fairly well with their defensive front. I think one of the strengths that they have is they're fast. Yeah. I mean, they really do move, and their guys are athletic up front. So that'll be a challenge for us, but I think we're up to it.
One of the things we haven't addressed is your defense. You haven't given up a single point in two games. Yeah. How is Bishop Gorman going to deal with your defense?
Well, first of all, let me just give props to our defensive staff led by Carl Cloward, Everest Montenay, Randon Young, Alyssa Louie, Wes Groves. I'm going on and on here, I know, but these guys deserve it. Tyler Strain, they've done a terrific job, and the kids have done a real good job responding to the new leadership in that regard. They're gonna have to do some good things to score points against us, to move the ball consistently against us. And in watching their game against Chandler, Chandler actually did a pretty good job with them. The game didn't get out of hand until right at the very end. And as a matter of fact, I thought Chandler had a chance there. But I think that there are some similar athletes between Chandler and us, and I'm just hoping that we make maybe less mistakes.
That was Bingham coach John Lamborn. His team is going to be playing Bishop Gorman on Friday here at Bingham at 7 p.m. We're bringing in Dusty Lister for Xfinity Sports Report. He's an expert on Bishop Gorman. He was at the game last year when Bingham lost in overtime 23-20 to the Gales, and he also does the play-by-play for several Bishop Gorman games throughout the season. This year, expect the Gales to be even better than they were last year. What makes them the #1 team in the country, Dusty?
Well, it's just depth. I think when you see a Bishop Gorman team coming out, they look like a junior college team. They could be. I mean, I was telling my wife we were watching the Montana and North Dakota State game on Saturday. I said Bishop Gorman is somewhat in that realm. I mean, you look at these kids, how many are going to Division I schools, and just the way they prepare and how they prepare their kids. It's pretty unreal. And this team is, I think, offensively is going to be much more explosive than last year. They have some guys that you're going to see a lot on Saturdays. Tate Martell, going to go to Texas A&M. Tyjon Lindsey's one of the top receivers in the country. Really looks like DeAnthony Thomas, very much so. And Biagio Walsh is the grandson of Muhammad Ali, who is an absolute stud. His mother was a track star. This kid is fast and I think they're much improved from a year ago.
So Tate Martell is only a junior quarterback. Mm-hmm. He's a 5-star rated recruit as a dual threat quarterback. He can throw it. He can run it. How does Bingham make his life difficult on Friday?
Just what they did last year. They were all over Tate Martell. It was his first start last year was against Bingham, and they were all over him. Parker Workman was all over him. Matangi was all over him. They have got to pressure him and continue to make him run around. They did a year ago and never let him get set. He's not a guy, though, that has to be in a spot. He's not a prototypical drop-back passer. He's a little bit more of a Johnny Manziel where he likes to run around, that gets him in a comfort zone. And for Bingham, if they keep him on the run, but also keep the pressure on him that way, I think it's really going to help them out a lot.
Not many teams are able to physically match Bingham up front. Does Bishop Gorman, they have 2 tackles that are both committed to UNLV. Do they have the capabilities to at least slow down Bingham's pass rush?
They didn't show that last year. I think it surprised Bishop Gorman a little bit. This year, I think they're going to come in with their eyes wide open. I think a year ago they played against Bingham, and they had a tough game the week before. I don't know if they fully expected Bingham to come out the way they did. So they need to be a little more prepared. I don't know if they'll completely slow them down because of what Bingham does defensively is so good. I think that'll be a little bit different. But I think Gorman's be a little bit more get the ball out of the hands of Tate Martell, get it in the hands of Ty John Lindsay and some of these other guys in space and let them do their thing more than they did a year ago where they tried to attack him downfield with Cordell Broadus and Alize Jones, who are both Division I players, which is a little bit different what they are now.
Bingham, they came out throwing haymakers last season against Bishop Gorman. 3 converted fake punts. They missed the one of them. Do you think they're going to gamble that much on their home turf?
I think so. I think you have to seize momentum wherever it comes, and that's what happened last year. They got in those opportunities, and if Kyle Gehrig overthrew a wide open man, and then Bingham has a lead earlier in that ball game, and I think they have to do that. I think that caught really Bishop Gorman off guard as well, as the fact that Bingham was so aggressive, really got them on their heels, and gave Bingham an opportunity in that ball game.
So they were able to survive, even though falling behind 13-0 in that game. If they fall behind 2 scores in this game, is it over?
I don't want to say no, but I think so. I mean, Keaton Torrey and the offense have got to get going. And now remember this, last year, Bingham struggled in the first 2 weeks against Davis and against Harriman. And when we went down to that game in Las Vegas, I thought, I don't know how this offense is going to keep up. And they show up for the moment. Their defense rose to the occasion and things got better. I think the offense ability for both these teams, I think Bingham is much better offensively this year than last year. Keaton Torrey is just a complete difference maker at quarterback from Kyle Gehrig. Nothing against Gehrig, he's just not an accurate passer. It wasn't his thing. And he also was come off some injuries. So, but this is better. But yeah, if they fall down with 2 scores, I think Gorman's smell blood in the water, and it could not necessarily get ugly, but I mean it could be a little Lone Peak Timothy-ish.
How is Bishop Gorman's defense? How are they going to be able to stop Torrey and their 3-headed monster in the backfield that Bingham employs?
If you watch the game Saturday on ESPN, Haskell Garrett is an absolute monster defensive tackle. And not only is he a space eater, which he does very well, he does penetrate really well and allows their linebackers to flow. One couple things to remember, name that's gone is Nico Fertitta. He's a young man that had the interception on the opening drive for Bingham a year ago, and he also forced the fumble in overtime. He's now at Notre Dame. So their back end could be a little bit more exposed because they're a little bit more inexperienced. So that's where opportunities will come. But Haskell Garrett is an absolute key for Bingham to stop.
Obviously, Bingham has the best defensive unit in the entire state. They've yet to relinquish 1 single point in their 2 wins to open the season. Obviously, Westlake and Harriman are not of Bishop Gorman caliber, although Harriman is might be the best 0-2 team in the state. How are they going to make Bishop Gorman's secondary honest?
Well, they're going to have to push the ball down the field. A year ago, I'll never forget this, in the opening drive, Bingham went in 1 formation. The entire drive all the way down the field. I formation, twins to the right. And the entire way down the field. And Cameron Smith was an outstanding running back, and they just pounded him down the field. And it was Gehrig that threw a pick later in that drive. And then they threw a couple quick slants. Gorman figured that out in the second half. That's why the offenses were a little bit stagnant. Bingham's going to have to push the ball down the field. And I think Torrey has the ability to do that. He has the arm to do that, and that's what they have to do. They have to stretch the defense with some vertical routes. If they're complete or not, they've got to keep the safeties out of the box and 15 yards away rather than creeping up inside of 10. That's how they get their offense moving. It's how the running game gets going and allows play action to become more effective when that happens.
You've seen Gorman probably more than anybody in the state right now. The environment on Friday is going to be incredible. They're expecting games like the old Alta games when they had 20,000 people here, standing room only. They're pre-selling tickets right now. Bishop Gorman is no stranger to big-time games. Yeah. So how much is a home field advantage really in play?
I think it's in play simply because Bingham's not having to go into their place and see the whole entourage that comes on with Bishop Gorman. You know, and not that these kids, maybe some of them know. I mean, you have Dana White from the UFC on the sidelines. You have Snoop Dogg was in the stands. And Flava Flav's there. And it's kind of like going to a small-time USC venue where you have all these celebrities strolling around the field. But it's the entrance. It's the music and all this different stuff that they bring. I think Bingham being home, I think it's going to center them in. I think Gorman's going to come out. They're going to be used to it, having gone to California, a lot of different places to play. But I think it will be a big thing for Bingham if they can get this home crowd on their side. I think it'll help them out a lot.
We want to thank Dusty for joining us. Bishop Gorman, the #1 ranked team in all of the land, is coming to Bingham on Friday night. We're here with juniors Jay Tufele and Longi Tuifua. Both of them are highly recruited athletes. Longi is committed to the University of Oregon, while Jay is uncommitted. They're preparing for Bishop Gorman on Friday. The defense has yet to relinquish a single point this season. How big of a priority is it for you guys to shine on a national stage against Bishop Gorman as far as a defensive unit as a whole?
It's a really big game for us. We have a lot of dirt on Bishop Gorman from last year, and we're looking to come back this year and see what we can do.
Does that loss still sting?
It's been stinging ever since we lost last year. That's what we've been working hard this whole year for, just this one game.
What do you think this game does for Bingham on a national exposure? The nation is going to be paying attention to this game. Is that in the back of you guys' mind that everybody's going to be watching?
Yeah, we're not only representing Bingham, we're representing the state of Utah, that we can play football as well as any other state.
Obviously, Bishop Gorman gets a ton of hype for their offense. Do you think your defense is underrated?
For this game, I really think we are. Our defense, we're that loudmouth team that we're just always there to the ball, and I think it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a defensive game.
For you personally, Jay, you're obviously getting a ton of exposure individually. Do you have any preferences for the teams that are recruiting you right now? Where you stand in your recruitment?
Right now, I just like to thank all the schools that have offered me and are recruiting me right now. So far, I really want to take my visits, but right now I like Utah and USC.
Utah and USC. Yeah. So those are the two front runners?
Yeah.
You committed to Oregon. What did you like about the campus in Eugene and the program up there?
I haven't checked out the campus. When I went down there for my unofficial visit, I only checked out the facility, but the facility was very nice. And the program, oh man, I love everything about them. It's just great.
Bishop Gorman has 2 offensive tackles that are committed to UNLV. How big of a priority is it to show how good your defensive line is compared to their offensive line? Is that a personal thing?
Well, we're just here to prove a statement that we do have the best defensive line in the nation, and we want to prove it this Friday night, and yeah.
So as far as you guys are concerned, do you think this is the biggest game in Utah State history as far as high school football is concerned?
Yeah.
It is. It is probably the biggest game in history. Probably the biggest game in Bingham history.
How do you keep an even composure? How do you refrain from getting too high emotionally when there's going to be around 20,000 people here watching you guys play?
Just treat it like a normal game.
There it is, a normal game. Friday night, Bishop Gorman is coming in to play Bingham, 7 p.m. here. We now come to everyone's favorite part of the show, where we're picking games and picking winners. Last week, I finished 6-1. Tom finished 5-2, and Brennan went 1-6. I mean, that's just pitiful. Oh, poor Brennan. But week 3 presents a whole different challenge with potentially the most difficult slate of games to date. The first game is a rematch of the 2014 semifinals. American Fork is heading to Brighton. The Cavemen are fresh off a loss in Idaho country, where they lost to Highland of Pocatello. They had a chance to tie that ball game late in the fourth quarter, but Tanner Smith threw his 3rd interception of the season, which equals 1/3 of his total all of last year. Meanwhile, Brighton escaped Fremont's claws 28-26 without the support of Drew Jensen at quarterback, who is still recovering from a knee injury. Simi Fehoko had another monster game against the Silver Wolves. He's now up to 15 receptions on the year. Obviously, American Fork is going to need to figure out how to stop him on the hashes. Do you think American Fork does stop Fehoko and company, or do you think Brighton prevails in that game?
American Fork just rocked Brighton in the semifinals of the 5A tournament last year, and a lot of those Brighton kids remember that. I think on Brighton's home field, I got to go with the Bengals.
I agree. I don't think Drew Jensen's loss is as significant as it might look like on paper. Obviously, that's going to hurt the running game without his athleticism back there. But he's not a quarterback. He's an athlete playing quarterback, and so they can adjust for that. Hunter Albert and Andrew Covey showed that they have the capabilities to make a defense honest, and they split reps against Fremont with Albert getting the majority of the reps. It really doesn't matter who's quarterback as long as you have Fialco out on the outskirts. Throw it up 15 yards, and he's got it. Sione Heimoli-Lund is also a powerful running back, and so he can account for that loss of Jensen. I like Brighton to win at home. Northridge won 3 games all of last season, including a 28-26 win against Layton in the final game of the season. Layton only had 2 wins all of last year, and they've already equaled that amount in the first 2 games this season. The Lancers put up 41 points against Weber and Clearfield, while Northridge needed a little bit of magic to get it past Bonneville. They survived a Hail Mary with 5 seconds left on the clock when the Lakers were whistled for an unsportsmanlike penalty, pushing the PAT back to 35 yards and out of range. It's a 2-0 versus 2-0 matchup. Crosstown rivals. They're now in different regions. How do you see that one playing out?
I like Layton. I think Julian Blackman is one of the best and probably least known players in the state. And the Crosstown rival, I think they want to get revenge from last year and have bragging rights for Layton City.
As Tom mentioned, Blackman, he's committed to the University of Utah. He's a 2-way player for the Lancers. Also, Taylor Katoa at quarterback is relatively unknown right now. He's still an underclassman, but he's got the potential to hurt people. Drew Perkins is really Northridge's only true weapon at this point in time. He's accounted for more than 800 yards of total offense and 9 touchdowns in his 2 starts. He's a converted receiver now playing quarterback, but I just don't think they have enough weapons around him to help him get past Layton. I like the Lancers to start 3-0. Pleasant Grove got gashed in California last week, losing 41-0 to Del Oro. They gave up more than 400 yards of total offense, including 300 through the air. It was the second consecutive week which they threw 4 interceptions in one game, bringing their total obviously to 8. They're lucky to be 1-1 with that type of production. So with the concerns at quarterback, the shakiness in the secondary, it's obvious to say that they need to tune that up before they play the Beat Diggers. And Drew Lisk at quarterback, who has accounted for more than 1,000 yards of total offense and 8 touchdowns at Spencer Curtis is one of the best receivers in the state. Pleasant Grove won this matchup 55-52 last year. Both teams racked up close to 1,200 yards of total offense. It's shifting now to Sandy, where they'll play at Jordan. How do you see this one playing out?
I like the Beat Diggers in this one. Eric Carr, the head coach of Jordan, has proved that it doesn't matter whether it's Austin Kafensis or Drew Liskren in the offense. They're going to be good. Their offense is amazing. I can't see them losing at home.
The problem always with Jordan is getting stops defensively. Right now they're giving up 450 yards to opposing offenses. Obviously, Pleasant Grove is probably going to meet that total as well. It's just a matter of, can Jordan make that extra defensive stop? They proved they could last week against Roy, who had a chance to win that ball game, but got stuffed in the 4th quarter. I like Jordan to make 1 or 2 more stops in Pleasant Grove and another shootout. I'm picking the Beat Diggers. Alta is 2-0 in the Le Mateo era, but their wins are against Hillcrest and Cypress. Not exactly death row. If they can get a win in St. George against Dixie, however, that's a whole nother story. Trey Miller is one of the top running backs in the state for the Flyers, who went toe-to-toe with the 9th-ranked Springville Red Devils in Springville in Week 1 before ultimately falling in a close battle there. Alta has still not proven that they're back. They're playing in 4A now. How do you see that one playing out, Tom?
I like the Flyers at home. It's a long drive down there to St. George. It's going to be hot still, and I just think Dixie's got too many weapons for them, even though they're a 3AA team.
Alta runs that up-tempo offense, which could play against them in that type of weather. Braxton Kerr is proven over the last 2 weeks that he is capable of running that offense, and Josh Davis is a hidden gem for the Hawks. at running back. But I like the Flyers to prevail on this one. I just don't think Alta has an answer for Trey Miller defensively, and I think the Flyers improved to 2-1 after losing in the opening week. Murray was gashed in its first 2 games on the ground against Taylorsville and Copper Hills. Meanwhile, Tooele really has shown that they can run the football behind Ryan Brady, who is not a household name at this point in time, but probably should be. The Buffaloes are coming off an impressive win against Shelley, Idaho, which is a powerhouse in their classification in Idaho. You don't have to be a wizard to state the obvious. Murray has to improve its rush defense if it has any chance of beating Tooele on Friday. It's going to be a loud and raucous atmosphere in Tooele. They're off to a great start. They have high expectations there, and it'll be a real barometer of what type of team Murray is this season if they can win this game. Do you think they have the potential to win? Do you think Murray wins this game?
I like Murray in this game. I think that Drew Cash is one of the best quarterbacks, and they've got a star in Maxis Tupai on defense. And this is a battle of 2 Ute coaches and 2 former Ute players, and Cal Brady and Mike Richmond. This is the toughest one for me to pick because I think Tooele is really on the upswing, and I think they could be very good.
I'm picking the upset, even though Tooele is 2-0. It would be considered an upset. I like the Buffaloes. I'm just not sure on Murray at this point in time. They looked really, really bad against Taylorsville, and then they beat Copper Hills, but Copper Hills is not exactly an extremely difficult opponent to beat. So I like Tooele to improve to 3-0. I think they're a dark horse in the 3AA classification. It's the Battle of the Silver Wolves. Riverton is headed to Fremont. This was a great game in the quarterfinals last year. Riverton beat Fremont 17-14 to secure their first berth in the semifinals up at Rice-Eccles Stadium. How do you see this one playing out, Tom?
I think I'm going to go with Fremont and the home team. It's a hard pick, but Riverton seems to be struggling a little bit. They've got a new coach with Brad Hawkins and maybe a little new system, and they lost quite a few players off of last year's team. So I'm going to go with Fremont this time.
I'm going with Fremont as well. Simeon Page is a great linebacker for the Silver Wolves of Riverton. He already has 25 tackles and 5 sacks after having 170 tackles as a junior last year. But he can't do it all by himself. I like Fremont in a close, powerful defensive struggle. Fremont prevails. And that brings us to our game of the week, and arguably the game of the year, and also the game of Utah history. Number 1 ranked team in all of the land, Bishop Gorman from Nevada, is coming to play the Bingham Miners, the top ranked team in the state of Utah, who also checks in 7th in the nation. It's a struggle of powerhouses. Bingham lost in overtime last year, 23-20 at Bishop Gorman. They're expected to have max capacity crowd here of at least 20,000 people. It's going to be a phenomenal environment for high school football here in this state. Bishop Gorman at Bingham. Your thoughts?
Well, it pains me to say it, but I'm probably going to go with Bishop Gorman. I've been watching Bingham since I was 12 years old, and they were at the old Copperton gym, but I think 6 points last week against Harriman, no touchdowns. It looks to me like Bingham's got some issues on offense.
Bingham obviously struggled on offense, but they were probably holding back a little bit to not show too much to Bishop Gorman. Even so, they only scored 20 points last season with arguably a better offense at their disposal, and that was through gadget plays. They converted 3 of 4 fourth downs on called fake punts, but they still were outgained by 100 yards by Bishop Gorman, who is just loaded. Tate Martell, the quarterback for the Gales, is committed to Texas A&M. He's a 5-star recruit as a dual-threat quarterback for the class of 2017. They also have tons of receivers and 2 offensive linemen that are committed to UNLV that are seniors at the tackle positions. So they can compete with Bingham's strong defensive line, and not many programs in the state of Utah can claim that as well. I'm picking Bishop Gorman to win once more. Number 1 team in the country will come in here, and the Gales are going to win this one. That's going to do it for us here on the week 3 of Campus Takeover. Let us know where you think we should be next week. It's a wide open slate, and we're up to anything. talk to us on Twitter or shoot us an email or also comment on our comment boards. We want to hear your voice. We want you to participate in this show. For myself, I'm Trevor Phibbs. Tom Wharton has left us to cover a soccer game, but he'll be back next week. Thank you, and we'll see you again.